We have a feature in Houdini called recipes, which allows us to save parameter settings and groups of nodes so that you can recreate them when you need them. We can save out a node's parameters as a recipe, or you can save out selected nodes that you want to reuse in your project as a recipe, things like lighting setups and stuff like that. So I'll just do a few simple examples here. Let's begin by looking at how you can save a node preset. So let's say we have some SOP. In this example, I'll just use this box SOP, and I will make some changes to the parameters. For example, the axis divisions and the size. So now we can save those parameter values as a recipe. Once saved, we can apply this recipe to other box nodes. To save the parameter values as a preset or a recipe, click on the recipe button and then select Save Node Preset, or right-click on the node, go to Recipes and select Save Node Preset. The Save Node Preset window comes up. In here you can choose which parameters you want to save or capture. For example, I want to capture the size and the axis divisions. We have to give this a name, so I'll name this box demo, for example. You can set the location where you want to save this recipe, such as user preferences. You can also capture keyframes and expressions. I will uncheck that for this because I don't need that for this. You also have a checkbox to select all parameters. I don't care to capture all parameters here, so I'll uncheck that and make sure only to check those that I want to capture. Alright, so let's say we want to make some changes. Let's say, for example, I want to increase the axis divisions. To do that, you can make the modification on the parameter. So in this example, I will change axis divisions from 3 to 4, then click Reload Values, and that will then update in this window as well for the property that we are trying to capture. Click Save to save that recipe. And now if we drop in another box, dive into that and select the box SOP node, we can click on the recipe button and that recipe will now show up. So we can select that and it's going to apply the parameters. You can also right-click on the node, go to Recipes, and then select your recipe from the list. I will delete all of these boxes in the scene because I want to show you what will happen when you choose to edit the contents of a recipe. If we want to delete, rename, or edit the contents of a recipe, we can go to the Recipe Manager, that is in the Windows menu, Recipe Manager. You can filter and search. For example, we can show only the node presets, and we can type a name. So let's say we know what the name is of our preset, of our recipe. So here we can select that, and then we can delete, or we can rename that in here as well, or we can click Edit Contents. When you choose to edit the contents of a recipe, Houdini will temporarily create the contents, and it's going to open up the recipe editor. So now with a box selected, for example, you can change some of the parameters again, and now again we can choose which parameters to capture, and you can click Reload Values, which will then capture the values that you have changed in the parameter editor. Save your changes when you are done. And you can just go and check to see if that works. So right-click on the node, Recipes, choose that preset, and we can notice that the changes did reflect. So we successfully made some edits to our recipe. We also have tool recipes in Houdini. A tool recipe is going to save a node or a set of nodes, including their wiring and current parameter values, as a new tool. What's useful about this is you can then access that tool in the tab menu when you want to recreate that saved node setup. So just a simple example, let's say I want to save this box here with some subdivisions on it. Maybe I'm going to reuse this multiple times in my project. Right-click on it, go to Recipes, and then select Save Selected Item as Tool. The node that you right-click on becomes the anchor of the node recipe. So when you drop in the recipe, the other nodes will be positioned relative to the anchor node. Don't worry about it if you forget about this for a second when you right-click and decide to make a tool out of some selected nodes, because you can also set the anchor in the dialog that comes up. The Save Tool window will show up, so I will give the recipe a name. You can choose the tab submenu where this tool will appear. You can choose a custom icon if you want. So for example, I'll just search for cube and select one of these and click Accept. And you can change where you want to save that recipe to. You can also select the anchor. You can select this in this menu, or you can actually right-click on the node. And you should be able to select the anchor in the context menu that comes up as well. I will create a new empty geometry container, and then in here I can now press Tab, and then in the recipe section my tool will appear. We get both of those nodes now. Just for demonstration purposes, I will delete this geometry again, go to Window and Recipe Manager. I will find that recipe and click edit. And now we can make some modifications to the recipe. So on the subdivide node, I will set the depth to 4, for example. And now maybe we want to add another node to this recipe. Well, I'll just go and work as usual. I will add maybe a color node or a transform or something like that for demonstration purposes. Maybe I'll set the color on this. I will select those nodes and click reload selection. That node will now show up in the recipe editor along with the other nodes. Save that recipe, create a geometry node, and then in here I will use that tool. And as you can see, it places down the box geometry, the modified subdivide node with the depth that we had set to 4, and the color node. So again, you don't have to create a new tool each time, because this allows you to edit your existing tool. We also have a decoration recipe. Now this is similar to a tool recipe, but you designate one node in the recipe as a central node. The central node is the node that we want to apply the recipe to in the network. I will select these nodes and right-click on it, and recipes, save selected items as decoration. In this dialog, I will give the recipe a name. We can see which node is the central node. It will be highlighted in the illustration. So I will apply this to a different setup. So let's say I have this box here, for example. I will drop down a subdivide node. The subdivide is what we want to target for our recipe. So I can right-click on the subdivide node and then select that recipe. So that will be the starting point. It's going to replace that with our recipe central node. And notice we get the rest of the nodes here as well. So we can just left-click to place those down. With the node selected, you can also find that in the recipes menu when you click the recipes button in the parameters editor, for example. So that was a quick introduction to recipes in Houdini. Of course, you can do complicated stuff with this. So let's say you are in Solaris and you have a 3-point lighting setup that you like, for example, with your render nodes and everything. Then you can simply select those and save those out as a recipe instead of having to redo that setup each time.